Ride Warriors, and welcome to the COASTER-net Top 5. On tonight's episode, we are going to look at the top 5 B&M inverts. We are ready, we are primed, and we are good to launch. So let's dive into the countdown.
5. Montu at Busch Gardens in Tampa, Florida. Montu was built in 1996. With a length of 3,983 feet, it lifts riders up 150 feet and drops them at 128. There are 7 inversions on Montu, 2 of which are loops, and the tallest loop, Andy, 104 feet. Now, this coaster has a G-force rating of 3.8 and has a max speed of 60 miles per hour. And now I have not had a chance to ride this coaster. Andy's been down to Busch Gardens, Tampa. I have not had a chance to do that. I've seen POVs of it. It looks excellent. I would compare this coaster to a Raptor is something that I would kind of compare it to. I know Andy's not going to because he thinks Raptor is 100 times better. But in my opinion, that's what I look at. So, Andy, you've ridden it. What are your thoughts on it?
Montu's a really fine coaster. I think the cool thing about it is that, first it has that Egyptian theme to it, where that whole section of the park, it used to have a much more heavy Egyptian theme to it, with the King Tut's tomb that has since been removed, to make way for other things like Cobra's Curse that they're putting in, this year. But, Montu itself, the Egyptian theme is really, really cool on this, and I think they play it out pretty well when you dive into these caverns. That I think that's one of the things that really sets Montu apart is those cavern dives where it feels like you're going underneath the sand of an Egyptian desert and then coming out on the wings of this of the god Montu. And and like you said, the 2 loops make it a little bit unique, where you have the standard loop at the front of the ride after the first drop, but then you also have one buried in the middle of the ride, which is a really cool element that you probably aren't really expecting as you're riding. It does a lot of cool stuff, an Immelman, a 0G roll, a Batwing, that, Raptor, I think in 1994 kind of broke the mold for an invert, and then Montu really took it to that next step, and a lot of inverts after Montu have just been trying to copy Montu, and that's why I think it fits onto this list, is because Montu kind of set the standard for a lot of the inverts that came afterwards, where they had these same elements. It set the inversion record at 7 inversions, and other coasters have tried to break that record since then and tried to copy what Montu is able to do so easily. And I still think that Montu ranks as one of the top inverts from B&M in the world, and that's why it's number 5 on our list.
Black Mamba at Phantasialand in Brühl, Germany. Black Mamba was built in 2006 with a length of 2,519 feet. Now, what's really interesting about this ride is that it's not your standard everyday invert. It's not very tall. It only lifts riders up 85 feet. Now, it drops farther than that. It drops 88 feet. It's also not very fast. It has a max speed of only 49.7 miles per hour. The difference, however, is its directional change and the G-force at over 4.0. Now, obviously, Andy or I have never been able to ride this ride, but after watching POVs, it is very evident that the theme is what this ride is all about. So I'm going to throw it over to Andy, and let's see what he thinks after watching the POV and the off-ride.
I'll tell you what, the first thing that jumps out at you is the theme. Looking at that lift hill, going up, and you have this very tribal-like atmosphere, that it's just battering you over the head. Now, what's interesting about Black Mamba is it cost about 11 million euros to actually build. The theming, though, cost just as much as the ride did. So they spent as much money on the theme as they did on the actual ride, which I think is really, really cool. And it leads to this awesome experience that there are plenty of videos out there that show these awesome pictures and these, through little creviced windows, that you get a sense of the ride and what it's doing. But it just looks amazing. And there's tunnels on the ride. The station itself is super themed, very dark to like this snake pit. Just amazing. Now, the ride itself having been built pretty recently in 2006, one of the younger inverts out there, it kind of tries to break the mold, like you were saying with inverts, that it does other stuff, like you said with the directional changes, look really interesting. That first drop has a really steep angle on it. Almost, I dare I say, almost Banshee-like in that first drop. And then it does things like corkscrews and things that you normally don't see on an invert. Black Mamba is actually doing. And for sure, Black Mamba has placed well in the polls. It's been in the Thrilling 32 and definitely is probably one of the top in B&M inverts in the entire world. And that's why it's here on this list.
Raptor at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. Raptor is Andy's favorite ride. So let me get that out there before we even start. But to give you an idea of what the ride's all about, Raptor was built in 1994 at a cost of $11.5 million. Its length, 3,790 feet. It takes riders up a breathtaking 137 feet and drops them at 119. It has 6 inversions at a max speed of 57 miles per hour. My favorite element is the helix. There are some things about Raptor that I like, some that I don't. But I can assure you that Andy is going to give you a very long reason why it is the best ride. So let's let him go ahead and get started now.
Well, that was just an asinine statement to begin with, that there's nothing wrong with Raptor. And I know many of you right now are in shock, just as I am in shock, that it's only number 3 on the list. You're probably like, this discredits every top 5 episode we've ever done because it's not number 1. I agree with you. I don't know who voted upon this, but I'm going to find out. And let me know, and I'll let you know that Raptor Universe will be on the case for sure to find out who put this as number 3. But regardless, let's talk about the ride a little bit, if you will. First, let's put it out there that Raptor to this day holds the attendance record at Cedar Point. That no other ride has moved the turnstiles like Raptor did back in 1994. It still holds the attendance record. So also, there's a reason why it holds the attendance record, and that's because it's the greatest roller coaster ever crafted. That from the first drop, where you see the beautiful Cedar Point Midway, and you can survey the entire park, the beach, the lake, everything is within your view. And then you drop into that first drop, and you kick the sky on the first inverted loop. Amazing first 2 elements right there. You move into the ride, you do some twists, you go into the first ever inverted Cobra roll. A first ever for any invert. Now, let me say this, that there were other inverts in the world before Raptor, specifically things like Batman, which is another fine invert. I'm not going to dismiss Batman, but the fact of the matter is Batman is about 30 seconds long after the first lift hill. Raptor is a full ride. Raptor took Batman and improved upon it so greatly, and it's still to this day has yet to be bested by any other invert in the world, in my opinion. Cobra Roll is amazing. Moving on to the second half of the ride, where you do some more inversions, setting some records, and moving into the final piece of the ride, which I think is by far the best part of the ride, is the helix. And it's the helix that sets Raptor apart from every other invert. Banshee tried to steal Raptor's helix. Why, I think we all know that Banshee tried to take the helix and do it itself, doesn't do it as well. Come on, people. Raptor's double looping helix, amazing. And now let's move on to the next phase of why Raptor's so good. You thought I was done. You thought, oh, there's no more that he can talk about. Oh, no, my friends. The next phase is talking about the theme of Raptor. Come on, it's a bird. Look at the name. Look at the logo. It's amazing. It inspires you to want to ride it. And it also happens to be the best color of green. And not just one shade of green, but 2 shades of green is what Raptor is. You have both dark green and light green with a little yellow and pink thrown in there as well to signify that great bird, that bird of prey, Raptor, as you go on it and ride it. Still the best ride at Cedar Point, still the best ride in the entire world. Raptor definitely deserves to be on this list, deserves to be higher on this list. And I'll let you know there will be a full investigation into why it's only number 3 and not number 1 on every list that we've ever done on the top 5. Every top 5 should end with Raptor as being number 1. I don't care what it is. Nemesis at Alton Towers in Staffordshire, England. Built in 1994, Nemesis takes riders on a journey that is 2,349 feet long. That it only has a height of 42 feet, but in it you have 4 inversions, speeds up to 50 miles an hour, and a drop that's 104 feet long. Dwain, people rave about Nemesis. People love Nemesis. One year, it even ranked in the final 4 of our Thrilling 32. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what makes Nemesis so special?
It's different. You get into the whole idea of the standard layout of the invert coasters. You go down a big drop, you go into a loop, you get to the corkscrews or the 0G rolls and maybe a helix like Raptor and some of the things we've talked about. But this one is completely different. You go up your lift hill and then there is no drop. It is a steady drop that you go into some of the first elements that you're going to see, a couple 0G rolls, some different transitions that you just aren't used to seeing. And then there's a smaller drop that goes into the Blood River. And, that's kind of where the drop is. And then there's even a bigger drop. I think you said 104 feet there, that comes after that about halfway through the ride itself. And what really makes this coaster different in regards to inverts is it's a terrain coaster. So I think that's what makes this so highly ranked, because people typically like to rank terrain coasters extremely high. Does the coaster interact with the terrain at all? And with this coaster, that's what it's all about. It's not about the high speed. It's not about all of the elements. It's not about a very high, coaster height or a very big drop. It's all about what can it do along the lines of going with the terrain. Does it interact well? Can you see everything? Does it have a theme? All of that. And I think because of that, it's ranked very highly on a lot of people's lists. And because it ranks highly on a bunch of people's lists, that's why we have decided to put it number 2 on the COASTER-net top 5.
1.
Banshee at Kings Island in Mason, Ohio. Banshee opened in 2014 and wowed coaster enthusiasts who had not seen a brand new invert in America for many years. Banshee took riders on a journey of 4,124 feet, taking them up 167 feet and dropping them 150 feet at an almost straight down angle. It features 7 different inversions and speeds of 68 miles an hour, and flips and turns riders in a whole variety of ways. Now, Dwayne, we were there for the very first day of Banshee's opening. We were there to see its birth. What did you think of this, dare I say, pink roller coaster?
I believe it's purple, but not to mention it was very cold that first day that we were riding that back in 2014. But, when it comes to what most people would consider the best, inverted coaster by B&M in the world, this one comes to mind over the past couple years, mostly because of the drop that you said. And there are a couple elements that I'm going to get to too. But, once you come out of the heavily themed station, I think the station is wonderfully themed inside and out. You can really, tell that when you're going through the queue lines and stuff, you've got the cemetery look. Of course, we know that Banshee's a name stiller that was supposed to be what Mantis was at Cedar Point many years before. But it starts right with the ride logo. We've talked about this on other shows before, Beat the Beast and things of that nature. What a great ride logo this has. And then going into the station. But then once you crest that first hill and you hear the Banshee scream, you take a dive down to the right that is better than any drop on an invert that I've ever had the chance to experience. And then really after you go through the loop, which the actual lift hill goes through, that's another one of those unique elements. You have what I think, which is the inline twist down into another drop that goes right down close to the ground. I know it's one of your favorites. It definitely gives me a rush every time I do that. And then the second half of the course, you've got your pretzel knot. You've got a very long 0G roll that really gets you out of your seat for a very long time. And then it kind of goes into your last element there, which is like a half, help me here.
Helix.
Helix, thank you. I know that everybody says that they were trying to steal from Raptor. We said that before in this show already. Yeah. But that kind of ends the ride. But it is such an intense ride because I don't think people really knew what to expect. Many coaster enthusiasts weren't coaster enthusiasts when the last one was built in the country. So you had a very big void there. So when people had actually ridden an invert, so I think it took a lot of people by surprise, especially those who had ridden Raptor, which was built in 1994. And so then that was really the two that you could compare that were close to one another. And people who've ridden many of them say this one, knocks it out of the water for many reasons, right? The theming, the ride logo, the vests. I think the vests make this coaster so much different and so much better than even per se Raptor. I think if Raptor were to be able to put the restraints that Banshee has on it, I think that would make Raptor jump back up there as one of the best coasters by everybody, not just Andy. But I honestly think that Banshee took something that no one had had for a very long time, did it the best that they could, and the way they did it definitely earns them the number one spot on the COASTER-net Top 5. Andy?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here this evening. As always, we love to hear your opinion, so please, if you agree or disagree with our top 5, put it in the comments. Join us on the forums. Follow us on Twitter at COASTER-net, or join us on Facebook / COASTER-net as well. As always, I am Andrew Rabarchak from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Dwayne Sponseller from Parkersburg, West Virginia. As always, may the queue lines be ever in your favor.
Right on, Ride Warriors.